A little bit more on our breaking news off the top. Ayman Al-Zawahiri, the leader of Al-Qaeda who took over after the killing of Osama bin Laden. It is impossible to overstate the significance of Zawahiri in the terrorism world. He started modern Islamic terrorism on the Sunni side. He was originally involved in the assassination of Anwar Sadat, the Egyptian president, was imprisoned in Egypt for that. When he got out, he headed to Saudi Arabia and then to Afghanistan to begin working with bin Laden. He was the chief of operations for Al-Qaeda. He planned the 9/11 attacks, which, of course, we know all too well. But if you think about the list of attacks he is responsible for, it is far, far longer than that. Zawahiri planned the 9/11 attacks, the embassy bombings in Kenya and Tanzania, the Khobar Tower bombings, the USS Cole attacks. That was the ship off of Yemen that was bombed with American sailors on it. Hundreds, if not thousands, of American soldiers who were hit with IEDs in Afghanistan or ambushed. Al-Zawahiri planned that as well. The 9/11 attacks in Benghazi, Zawahiri's video message inspired and ordered that operation. It was a drone strike carried out in Afghanistan by U.S. forces. Very different than the bin Laden raid. We're going to learn a lot more from President Biden when he speaks about 25 minutes from now. We bring in George Will, Pulitzer Prize-winning columnist, NewsNation senior contributor. Is this a moment or a defining moment for President Biden when it comes to foreign policy?
Well, it's just a moment because these people are fungible. They are replaceable. I'm not saying that Zawahiri wasn't a key figure, but he replaced Osama bin Laden and someone will replace him. However, this occurs just about a full year after the shambolic departure of the American forces from Afghanistan. And just as at this moment Joe Biden needed a success, this is something the nation can all agree on, left, right, and center. And it's a success for American intelligence. Hunting these people in the wilds of Afghanistan and Pakistan is hunting for a needle in a very large haystack. And we should simply sit back and celebrate the professionalism of the intelligence services that brought this off.
You said left, right, and center that we can celebrate, which almost never happens. Typically, the only thing that brings us together, left, right, and center, is something truly awful in America, something like a 9/11 attack, something like this large existential threat. And instead, this is something that Americans perhaps don't celebrate, but are certainly brought together by and feel safer because of. How does President Biden speak tonight to the country and not sound like he's taking a victory lap while still taking a victory lap?
Well, I think he won't quite spike the football and do an end zone dance, but he has every right to celebrate this as an act of him as commander-in-chief. In that regard, Leland, it's worth remembering that it has been credibly reported that as the Obama administration was making the final decision as to whether or not to have the attack that resulted in the death of Osama bin Laden, that Vice President Biden was opposed to the attack at that time. So this sort of erases that hesitancy and establishes him as a commander-in-chief. And as I say, that he's had a somewhat dreary 2022. This is a highlight.
Yeah, we're watching pictures of a very young Ayman Al-Zawahiri. He was a doctor. He was also a leader of the Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt in the early 1980s when he planned the assassination of the Egyptian president, Anwar Sadat. He was imprisoned, and he was seen there screaming, "We wanted a Muslim country. We wanted an Islamic country, and you took it away from us." And that sort of elevated him in the terrorist world of militant Islam at that moment to then go on and lead Al-Qaeda. Does this have any significance, really, in bringing back a sense of fear of the American military, a la Nancy Pelosi's visit to Taiwan, or is ordering the strike, a drone strike in Afghanistan, very different than showing backbone against either Vladimir Putin or Xi Jinping?
It's different, but it is an example of an American strength, that is technology, wielded deftly. The fact remains that as we left Afghanistan, the Biden administration was urging us to understand that we were leaving the battlefield, but we retained a capacity to strike over the horizon. We did that today. So it seems to me, again, let's give credit where credit is due.
Exactly, and I had that written down on the sheet, over the horizon, and a lot of people made fun of that. We did on the show as well. The idea that you could conduct counterterrorism, and we actually have the soundbite. Take a listen.
Terrorism is metastasized around the world. We have greater threats coming out of other countries, a heck of a lot closer to the United States. We don't have military encampments there. We don't keep people there. We have over-the-horizon capability to keep them from going after us.
Aside from the sort of horrific images of Afghanistan, of the withdrawal from Afghanistan, the similarities, say, to the United States withdrawal from Saigon, of us leaving our allies behind, does today vindicate that and wash that away, both in the eyes of the American people and abroad?
It does not vindicate it. It does not wash it away. It does, however, demonstrate that the United States has a very long arm with a very lethal reach. And we have enemies who will note this and will look over their shoulders. And a nervous enemy is the kind of enemy we want if we must have enemies.
Yeah, and the more time our enemies spend worried about that long arm, the less time they have to plan for causing us harm. You think about Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi, the leader of ISIS, who was killed in a raid ordered by President Trump. You think about Operation Neptune Spear, a raid ordered by President Obama. You had tangible things to discuss. You had the idea of how the helicopters came in, the dogs, the bravery of the SEALs going in, on and on and on and on, the bravery of Delta Force going in after al-Baghdadi. You don't have any of this here. There's no one for the media to make a hero out of. There's no great American story. It's somebody sitting in a shipping container controlling a drone, not taking away anything from America's ability, but it limits the amount of coverage and of American heroics that the media can report on, does it not?
It does, but there's a long pedigree, a long list of great American achievements done by anonymous people far from the battlefield. I'll give you two examples. The great victory that turned the tide in the Second World War in the Pacific was the breaking of the Japanese code that led to the victory at the Battle of Midway. The code breakers were largely anonymous, we know some of them, but they turned the tide of war. Furthermore, a little bit after, 2 years after that, we intercepted communications that indicated we knew that a Japanese plane carrying Admiral Yamamoto, the architect of the attack on Pearl Harbor, was going to be flying near American forces, who intercepted him and shot him down. Again, anonymous, but wonderfully successful.
You have to think that, especially in this case, the intelligence operatives who got this information and got the targeting information are exactly the same kind of people you just talked about from those two moments in World War II. George, it's good to see you as always. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good to see you. Bring in Major Mike Lyons now. Talk to us a little bit about what has to go into knowing exactly where somebody as skilled at hiding as Ayman Al-Zawahiri is, where he was, when he was going to be there weren't going to be civilians around, and then being able to take them out all in real time.
Yeah, Leland, great day for the United States, for the intel community, for the CIA, and for those who found him there, fixed him, and then fired the actual shot there. The question is, who actually gave him up? It took some intel on the ground in order for that to happen. Did it come from the Afghan government? He was before inside of Pakistan, where he likely had a safer haven than he had in Afghanistan while we were there. The U.S. leaves Afghanistan. He likely comes back into Afghanistan, where he just feels more comfortable with maybe the express intent of the permission of the Taliban that's running there. But if we've come to find out that the Taliban ends up giving him up then you're going to see this Al-Qaeda Taliban war that'll take place at this point. So lots of questions still remain unanswered. I'd like to understand how Pakistan allowed us to fly a drone over their territory. Afghanistan's a landlocked country. So lots of things to figure out what exactly happened in order to find him, fix him. And of course, only U.S. technology allows us to take that building out with minimal casualties surrounding it. Nobody else was likely injured or hurt. And we got our target. Good day. If you're a 9/11 survivor or you're a 9/11 relative of someone that lost their life there, you've got to be reinforced that the United States has not forgotten and is going to continue to go after these kinds of people that plan that kind of attack.
And it's not just 9/11. It's the Khobar Tower bombings. It's the USS Cole. It's the attacks in Benghazi on 9/11 of 2012. It's the first World Trade Center attacks. The list goes on and on. It's so many soldiers in Afghanistan who are killed by IEDs and ambushes, who no longer have limbs. This is justice in that sense, and in a true sense of the word, really. That said, how much are we to believe that Al-Qaeda is still a threat, that they're still able to project force, like the London bombings, like some of their other sort of more spectacular moments?
I think they can only do well when they have so many things that go right for them that we just don't see go right for them anymore. We've destroyed most of their communication networks. Zawahiri was really the CEO of multiple different Al-Qaeda factions that just kind of talked a big game, but really didn't have a lot of capability. They were having a hard time recruiting, couldn't raise money. And so we've got to stay on our toes and not and understand the creativity that comes into making sure that we can defend against our enemy. But I think Al-Qaeda has been significantly weakened, and this kind of attack again shows that we're willing to go out there. Let me tell you one more thing. Behind my right shoulder, you'll see a hat of the duty commanders and the duty sailors on the USS Cole, right now serving in the Mediterranean. I've got a family member that's on the USS Cole. I guarantee that they are celebrating tonight. There's a memorial to those sailors that were killed that day. And I guarantee that they're celebrating tonight knowing that this person's been taken off the battlefield.
Without question, as well they should. You said something interesting about whether the Afghan government cooperated or not in this, now about 15 minutes away from the president's speech, which we probably will not learn so many of the questions that you rightly pointed out. Where did the intelligence come from? How did you get overfly rights for a drone? Did we ask or did we just do on and on? But this was in Kabul. This wasn't in Tora Bora. This wasn't outside a cave. This was in the Afghan capital. Are we to believe that Al-Qaeda was working and operating inside of Afghanistan with the Taliban's tacit permission?
It's possible they could have lured him in there. He's hiding in plain sight, similar to Osama bin Laden, in an area that he didn't think he was going to be attacked. It's a lot more comfortable there in Kabul than it is in those mountainous regions that they had to hide before in the past. The question is, did a network give him up, or was it one individual? What exactly was the intel that found him in that spot, and then they had to monitor? So that monitoring took place over the horizon as well. Drones likely flying over Afghanistan hours and hours at a time, ensuring that this target was exactly who it said it was. And then the last piece is there's someone on the ground that confirmed it. And so we won't likely find out. We know it was done by the CIA, but there's a lot of good tradecraft likely responsible for making sure this went down. And again, all, as your previous guest said, more from U.S. technology. I've always been a believer in the over-horizon technology. I think this is going to be a new kind of warfare. And the only thing we must defend against now is another nation or another non-nation state having the same capability to do it to us.
You think about how it was confirmed, great question. And more importantly, how it was confirmed in a place that conceivably is a completely denied environment for Americans inside of Kabul. I guess it leaves open the possibility that the Taliban sort of didn't mind him getting taken out and offered him up on a silver platter, hence what happened. We may never know in terms of what happened. Put this in context for us, and we talked to George Will a little bit about it from a sort of geopolitical strategic side. Talk about it just from the military side. Right now you got the USS Ronald Reagan in the South China Sea, the Chinese military now announcing drills in the South China Sea. Are we still to believe that America's ability to project force and its even conventional military force is truly second to none face on face with the Chinese Navy, say?
No, Leland, we have to, because that's really what deterrence is all about, having such a powerful military that our adversaries and enemies don't think they should do anything. I think you look at what's happening in Europe right now. Russia has really been degraded significantly conventionally, and we're going to get better with Finland and Sweden inside of NATO. So Europe is on the way of getting healthy. Now the pivot to the Pacific has to take place. It's a naval fight that likely will take place, will likely happen. We know that China has always had strategic patience when it's come to use its military, but they've invested a tremendous amount over the past 20 years. The question is, do they want to fight? Do they want to fight the United States? And we just have to remain to be seen. Let's hope this kind of hit shows the Chinese that we still have a lot of more technology on shelves, not even deployed yet, that would bring to the battlefield if something happened.
I can't help but think, as we look at video of the Ronald Reagan in the South China Sea, huge carrier battle group. You think about all of the Chinese ships. They now have a larger Navy than the United States, mostly deployed around the South China Sea. You've got Nancy Pelosi's plane flying to Taiwan. You've got threats by the Chinese, saber rattling of they're going to shoot the plane down or there's going to be war. We're not going to stand by. How likely is A, miscalculation, but B, how good are the Chinese at keeping some colonel from getting a little bit too far over his skis and deciding I'm going to show the Americans and make myself a hero?
So in order for disaster to happen, it'd have to be a planned attack. I'd look in history and say it'd have to be a Pearl Harbor-like attack. Because if they decided, let's just war game this out. If they decided to go after Secretary Pelosi's aircraft, they'd have to go after the Ronald Reagan. And they've planned and they've practiced on trying to take out our carriers. They would have to go after our destroyers. They would have to go after the speakers, but aside from the speaker's plane, all at once. And so if one person decided to get over their skis, then that plan would be completely destroyed. The Chinese wouldn't have any credibility. The question is it the speaker's plane, or is it what the missile that they have sending towards the Ronald Reagan? So you war game all those situations out, and you look at it and you say, I got to think the Chinese are really in control of this, because they know that the United States would escalate very quickly. But for them to be successful, they can only be successful if they have an overwhelming attack initially. And would have to go.
Risk of miscalculation over the next 48 hours?
Well, right now, people are likely on phones watching things. Our intel satellites are all fired up. I'm sure that everyone's leaning forward. Everyone's cleared their desks. Nothing more important going on in the world right now than what's happening in the South China Sea, as well as the Middle East. And we always have our eye on what's going on in Ukraine.
Thanks for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find NewsNation on your television provider. And don't forget to subscribe. Click the red button to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.